it's just a season. It's going to pass.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's one of the fun. It's not so super fun, but it kind of is, I think, for people like us to be able to say, you know what, it's just, it's something to work through. It's a problem to solve. And I do love problem solving. If you can look at it that way and think, okay, what are all the different possibilities that I can work through this with, and just go for it, and not allowing that fear of the unknown to get in the way.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? The guest on this week's episode of the podcast has an extremely cool story as an investor, an investment-focused agent, an Airbnb host, a house hacker, and lots more. Devin is an absolutely incredible person, always doing great things. In this interview, we get to chat about several topics, including Devin's unreal origin story in the real estate industry, working through problems and having the seasons pass, the true power of genuinely helping people, getting the right tenants in your property, and so much more. There is so much to digest in this episode, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 73 of the Creating Wealth Podcast. Today, we get the great pleasure of chatting with Devin Marshall, an absolutely incredible New Hampshire-based investor-focused agent with the Candor team, a house hacker, an Airbnb host, and so much more. What's going on, Devin? Very glad to have you on. How are you?
Thanks, Kyle. I'm privileged to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Hold on a second. We got some company here. Get my glasses on. There we go.
I'm so excited, Devin. Yeah, so, to kind of jump right into things, like what got you into real estate? Like if you could, kind of tell us a little bit about your backstory. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I went to college to become an attorney. And so I was getting ready to graduate from college and with a political science degree and a communications minor, and really not sure what I was going to do with it, except maybe go to law school. And my mom said, hey, I was thinking about buying a business where you did apartment locating. And back then it was, people would come into your office and they would fill out an application and you help find a place to live. We contracted with apartment complexes and placed great tenants in these complexes. And she was like, I was thinking about buying it, and you can be like sweat equity and I'll put the cash down, but we have to get our real estate licenses to do it. And so I said, sounds good. I really hated school. I didn't really want to go to school anymore. And so I said, okay, Mom, that sounds fine. So about a month before I graduated, I started going to real estate school, and I lived in the same house my whole life. And back then I had no idea what a realtor was. Sounds like nuts, but I had absolutely no idea. And so I went to school. I got my real estate license about a month after I graduated from college. And my mom and I started in this business. And so that started it out. I started doing the rental part of it, just renting places for other owners. And then, of course, naturally, people came to me and said, hey, would you think about managing? And so me being young and energetic like you, I was like, sure, I could do that. And I had no training or anything, but I was like, yeah, I could do that. So I just started doing, one rental at a time, doing property management. And then about a year after I got my license, I had a friend who was a real estate attorney, and he said, hey, you want a couple listings? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So my mom is my broker, and she's like she was a numbers, more accountant, kind of just a more quiet person. And I was way more of an extrovert. So we did really well together. And so I got my first 2 listings, and one of them was an estate sale, and the other one was a divorce situation. And they were both kind of difficult. The estate sale one was like your worst smelling nightmare when you walk in. The carpets were horrible, and they definitely had pets. And then the second one, I found out after I listed it and got it under contract, it had a pool that was built over a utility easement. That was a problem. And then it had to be connected to city sewer. That was another problem. And then I found out after I sold it that the rates had just gone down, and FHA interest rates had just gone down from about 16 to about 9.5%. So we were all so happy. Now I know that sounds like so long ago, and 9.5 is so high, but back then it was really low. And I'd sold it on an FHA loan, and the appraisal took 6 months.
Wow.
So those are my very first 2 listings, and it was a real great learning experience. But I got to the closing on the one that had all this, septic and sewer hookup and all that, and I was sitting there with the other agent, the buyer's agent, and I said, "This is my first closing," and he was like, "What? If I would have known, I would have helped you through this." And so I said, "Oh, thank you so much, but here we are." And he said, "You know what? I'm the trainer at my company, at my real estate company. I would love for you just to come and sit through a training course." Because my mom was my broker. She didn't know any more than I knew really about selling real estate. And so it was really cool. I just felt like God was with me every single step of the way. And I got to go to this office with this man named Dale, and he let me sit in. And those were the old days where we had Texas Instruments calculators, where we had to do all of the stuff on the calculator. So we had to learn how to amortize and do all those kind of things. And so he taught me all of it and said, "Here's how you do a listing. Here's how you do all of it." And so I was just like super, super blessed by that. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
So that's how I got into real estate. And I have a lot of other stories that I could share with you another time. But so then I got married a few years after I graduated, and we have 5 children and one son that we adopted. So we have 6 altogether. And so I was a mom for a long time. I worked full-time until my 3rd child was born. And then I went part-time. And then in 1998, we ended up moving to another town. So at that point, I just hung my license in a Century 21 in the mountains in a little resort community. And I was a mama mostly, and did a little bit here and there. Everybody knew I was a realtor. My friends would call me and say, "Hey, I want to buy a house." So it was kind of a cool profession to have with children.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that a lot. But then I just kept wanting to do investments. And I was like, really, I'd see a house, and my husband was a contractor at the time. And he's a pastor now, but he was a contractor and a pastor in Ruidoso. But I was like, "Honey, I find these houses all the time, and they're so cool, and we could buy it and flip it, because I can find the house and you can do the work, and I can help you design it, and we can make a profit." And yeah, I was so excited. My parents were very entrepreneurial, and they had purchased land and different things like that, and sold them on real estate contracts and made interest on their money. And so my parents had always been like that, but John's hadn't.
Mhm.
And so he was like, "I don't know, that's like a lot to take on. I don't know about that." So I prayed for about 20 years.
Just a couple days, right?
Yeah, maybe 25 years. So anyway, we had always bought our own house. That was one thing we did do, is we bought our own houses, and he would add to them, and we'd do value adds. We didn't know what that was called at the time, but we did that. We had purchased 3 different homes in our married life. And finally, about 2016, my mama passed away and left me a little bit of money. And so I said, now we'd been married a long time. We'd been married almost 30 years at that point. So my dreams had been a long time coming. And 2017, when my mom's life insurance policy came, I said, honey, I really want to invest some of this. And he finally looked at me and he said, go ahead. So I found a condo, a really great condo in a beautiful neighborhood with pretty low fees. And we bought it and we rented it out. I'd been doing property management for years.
Yeah.
And he knew how to do all the repairs and it didn't require very many. So we got our first rental and rented it out immediately to a friend's daughter. She took great care of it. Her husband was actually like super project oriented, and he took all the doors off and took all the hinges off and replaced them all with new ones and painted everything. And I was just like, this is awesome. The dream tenant. Yeah, dream tenant. So then about a year later, that was 2000. Actually, I think I bought it 2000. It was 2017. And then about 2 years later, a man came to me that I was working with and said, Devin, I'm about ready to sell my 2 condos. You want to buy them? And I said, wow, yeah, well, tell me about it. He was a really good friend of mine. I'd worked for him for quite a few years and as a property manager. And he knew I wanted to invest and I hadn't been able to. So he said, I've got 3 options for you. He said, the first option is you can pay me cash for him. And I said, not happening. And then he said, the second one is you can just get a loan and buy him that way. Or he said, third, I'll sell him to you for nothing down and I'll finance it. I was like, what? Wow. Let me think about it. And so we ended up buying 2 condos and we got them on one note for $150, $160,000. And so
I was like, wow, that's quite the discount.
That's a cheap one.
What a good guy.
$160,000 for 2 condos. Wow. And we ended up putting them in Airbnbs and they made quite a profit. So those were our very first investments. We ended up moving to New Hampshire in September of 2019, right after we bought the 2 condos. And the Lord brought us here. My husband's, like I said, a pastor, and we felt very, very confident that he was calling us to move to New England, of all places, from New Mexico, and just to bring the hope of Jesus to people and just tell them we love them and that he loves them. And so we're like seemingly crazy, almost 60,
Let's do it.
moving to a brand new place, not knowing anybody. We'd never been here before. And I'm thinking, I'm really tired because I'd been doing property management and real estate sales for quite a long time. And I was pretty pooped out. So I got here and found out that I could get my license transferred to Massachusetts. It was reciprocal licensing with New Mexico. Nuts. That's just like,
that's
so
crazy.
random.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're very different kinds of real estate. We don't use attorneys in New Mexico. And, the oldest property that I ever sold was about probably in 1940. That was really old in the Southwest. And so I come here, I'm like 1780. What? It's just crazy. And I'm looking at the basements. We didn't have basements really there. Not much. And I was seeing asbestos and I'm seeing lead-based paint disclosures and smoke, all these things that we didn't have.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did get my license and then I decided I just love real estate. I can't not sell it. And I got my New Hampshire license. I'm actually a broker in New Hampshire.
Oh, really?
That's
awesome.
Yeah, I got to do kind of a grandfathered in sort of thing. I took the New Hampshire test, but I'm a broker here too. So anyway, and so after being here a year, we got to buy our first 3 family and we're working on getting a 4 family now.
All right.
So that's our story. And there's a lot of stuff in between, but it's a crazy story.
Devin, that's absolutely amazing. Like, I don't even know where to start, like, to dig in.
Yeah.
Going from like, having like the very like entrepreneurial like parents and upbringing and everything to yeah, like just absolutely everything. Like that's like to those like, first getting your foot in the door, like with those
Yeah.
first two listings, and then
Yeah.
having them be like extremely complicated and like,
Yep.
just learning like so much, right off the bat. Like
Yeah.
that's quite the way to get into the game. I could imagine.
It really was. But I just took it, like you said, I took it as, wow, this is a great experience.
Yeah,
If you start off hard, like you have with your multi, it's like there's not a whole lot you can't do.
you're right.
You take it as that's the best kind of learning is
Yeah,
experience.
you're right.
So, and my dad always said that the School of Hard Knocks was the best teacher, and it's kind of true. It kind of
Definitely.
is true. Yeah.
I'm seeing it more now than before I bought my house. Like I understood like the concept of like, oh, like it might, not be so good like when some of these things hit the fan and like tenants give you a hard time, and like
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'll keep that in mind. But like once you actually get into the situation, like it's a little bit different,
It
and
is.
like
It is.
I,
Yeah.
I totally see that now of like, just kind of like taking a step back, like when something's hitting the fan, or like, you have a little like emergency or whatever at a property or whatever. And, just staying calm and,
Yeah.
just keeping like the long-term vision in mind, and not
It
like
is. And
freaking out.
it's just a season. It's going to
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the fun. It's not so super fun, but it kind of is, I think, for people like us to be able to say, you know what, it's just it's something to work through. It's a problem to solve. And I do love problem solving. If you can look at it that way and think, okay, what are all the different possibilities that I can work through this with, and just go for it, and not allowing that fear of the unknown to get in the way. And I think for my husband, that was his issue. Was he was like, what if we get in over our heads, or what if we get into something that we can't handle? And I just was so sure that we were going to be fine, because we both had pretty, the right gifts for it.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it keeps people from doing things that might be really super profitable, is just that fear
Yeah.
of what could happen. And so for me, I can say, it took me like over 55 years before I was able to truly really start my investment dream, like I had always wanted to do. But it's never too late.
You're right.
It's never too late to start. You just gotta jump in. And gosh, for you guys, there's so many opportunities. There's so much financing that you can get into with like very little down.
Yeah.
And we can negotiate closing costs. And there's just
Crazy.
it like Mass Housing, New Hampshire Housing. There's just so many cool opportunities. And don't you just love it when you can share those with people?
Oh yeah.
That's like my favorite thing. It's like, let me help you. I can help you to succeed. You're gonna love this.
That's been one of my favorite parts of being an agent, as well as like just kind of like networking with some of the people that we
Yeah.
talk to on a daily basis, right? Is when you find out about some of these really cool like loan products, or like like mass save. Like I've been like preaching mass save, like it's like
Oh yeah. I know. I need to see what they have here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, there's got to be something out there, I imagine.
Yeah, there must be. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've been telling everybody about it, like it's like the craziest, like most life-changing thing in the world. Like
Yeah.
it's just so cool, like when you find out about some of this like lesser known information, and then you
Yeah.
could just tell like everybody and their mother about it. Be like,
And you
oh
just want
hey,
to give
like
it. Yeah, just give it.
yeah, it's
That
fun.
reminds me. I think that John and his group, the millennial group,
Mhm.
used the mass savings on the complex that they purchased.
Probably, yeah.
I think they did, and I think they saved a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
It's just super, whatever scale you can use it on. It's just so important. Very cool.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
telling I was meeting somebody for coffee yesterday, and like I was telling him about it, and I'm like, oh, like literally, after doing it once, and it's actually kind of funny. So when I first wanted to like look into Mass Save and like how the program worked and like the assessment and everything, I convinced my mom to let me use our single family in Tewksbury as kind of like the guinea pig. I'm like, I'll set up everything. Like, I'll have the guy out here. I'll meet him. Like, I'll take time off of work. Like, just sit back. I'm like, I got this.
Yeah.
So I ended up, having a guy out here, and we were walking around, and like he was, talking about like the heating systems, the water heaters, and whole shebang. And he just to kind of see how the program worked, and
Yeah.
like what I did notice was from using it for a single family is
Mhm.
actually drastically different than a multifamily. And
Really?
it's not like it's like worse. Like the actual assessments themselves and stuff are very similar.
Mhm.
Um, but the incentives for multifamily can be really crazy, like really cool.
Really?
Yeah, it's something crazy, and don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's if you need like insulation, like blown in insulation and stuff in a
Yeah.
multi, I'm pretty sure they cover 100% of the financing on it. So it's completely
Really?
free. Like, pick up the phone, like have them out here, and like
Wow.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And like most people don't know. Like you can literally like, and they hook you up with a bunch of like free light bulbs. And I tell people, I'm like, if you get nothing else out of this, I'm like, they'll give you a bunch of light bulbs and some surge protectors. I'm
Oh
like,
my
surge
gosh.
protectors are expensive, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
if nothing else, like,
Right.
and
That's
it's
crazy.
unbelievable. And like
Wow.
I'm going through the process right now for having my furnace replaced with like a heat loan. And like that's something that I've been telling people, and I want to tell more people about it, like as I finish up the process, because it's actually been extremely simple.
Yeah.
And what it's allowed me to do was I got a quote from my contractor to replace my super old and primitive oil fired furnace in my unit.
Oh yeah.
And it was a pretty decent amount, especially after, putting in a couple oil tanks and, down payment, closing costs.
Yeah. All those
It's been a
expenses you
month.
weren't expecting, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been a month, you know what I mean? And like I'm already, X amount of dollars in there. But
Yeah.
basically my thing was like, oh, well, the terminology that Mass Save pretty much like um presents is
Yeah.
0% interest financing over 7
Yeah.
years for
That's
Mass Save.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like there's a bunch of different banks and stuff that do it. Like if you go on their website, they have like, a whole list of different banks like all over the place. It's a lot of like credit unions and like more local banks.
Yeah.
And I noticed that my credit union in Tewksbury was on there. And I've been with them for years. So I'm like, oh, I called them up and everything. And they're like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. They're like, the only thing is we do it on 5-year terms instead of 7. I'm like, I don't care. That's perfect.
Oh,
Let's
that's
do it.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't care about 2 years. I'm like, whatever, whatever. Because my thing was, Devin, was I'm like, I have at least a couple other, I have like a fuse box I have to replace in my unit. Got a pretty fat quote for that. Um, and then like if anything else hits the fan, hopefully not, knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be able to keep my liquidity. And I was like,
Yes,
oh well,
absolutely.
I wonder if I could use Mass Save to space out this. It was a little over $6,000. I'm like to space out this $6,000 over the
Yeah.
5 years and not have it cost me anything to borrow the money. I'm like, so then I can have them install this next week,
Yeah.
get the rebate added in there, because that's something too, is like depending on your equipment,
Yeah.
you'll get like a rebate for getting a new product installed.
We actually are getting we bought 5 different split units,
Yep.
heating and air conditioning, got rid of our 1950 furnace. It was, but yeah, so we get to claim that on our taxes and get a good rebate, I hope. We'll see.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like that's the thing is like, if you get something like that, or like Mass Save, they do like water heaters, boilers, furnaces,
Yeah.
single pane windows. They do a little bit with knob and tube too. I haven't looked enough into it, but there's some
Yeah.
kind of program like to help out with getting that rewired. I don't know enough about it, but there's a little bit
Geez,
on the
that's
site.
just great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's super good.
Yeah, like so like being able to do that has been really huge, and like the process, again, knock on wood, has been extremely smooth. Working with the contractor, like they've used Mass Save before, like they give
Yeah.
me a quote, and then the equipment that they have to put in has to be a minimum like efficiency.
Yeah.
For like Mass Save and like the bank
Right.
to approve
It
it.
has to make sense. It's going to have
Exactly.
to be an energy saver and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like they did that, and then I sent that to Mass Save and they approved it. And then I went over to the bank in Tewksbury and filled out the
Yeah.
application, and hopefully they're going to approve it. And then they basically cut me a check. I tell the contractors to do the job, give the check to the contractors, and then Mass Save has like an inspector come out and just double check that everything went well.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
now I just pay the credit union back. So instead of having it be, $6,000 right now and taking a
Right.
nice fat chunk out of my bank account,
Yeah.
it's like $93 a month and with no interest.
That's
It's nuts.
yeah. And you have your cash to do what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now it's
makes
crazy.
sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, it's just one of those things, like a lot of people, might have heard of Mass Save, but like never used them, or like, maybe like never even heard of them. And like these kind of programs like can change lives. Like what if, like like what if all of a sudden, the boiler goes out and now I need to get that replaced, or like,
And
our
that's
pipe bursts.
thousands. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a lot. That's a big chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like
it's so
one thing that I've been absolutely like just like straight up like preaching to everybody is, especially when you're going to buy a house. I mean, with life in general, but buying a property, whether it's a house hack or a single family or a rental or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure you have a good amount of reserves.
You got to have some reserves. Yeah, it's true. It is true.
You never know, when things are going to happen.
And I think especially with multis, because you have a lot more opportunity for things to go wrong, especially if you have multiple furnaces.
Yep.
And those are some of the things that I really tried to have my focus on for my investors too, is like, let's look and see the age of the roof, look and see the age of the heaters. Have any of them been updated? Because that's really valuable. Those kind of things are super valuable. Our 3-family, even though it had a 1950 furnace on one of the units, it had, all new windows, well, newer. It had a newer roof. It had newer hot water heaters. It was just good bones, newer siding. And those are the kind of things that can cost you so much money. Oh, yeah. But gosh, with Mass Save, I'm going to have to find out what the New Hampshire products there are. I'm sure there must be some products here, but I'll have to figure that out. Maybe you can help me.
Yeah,
I'll get one of my investors who are the I don't know if you've ever heard of Enneagrams. The
so.
Enneagram 5 is the person who loves to do research. So I have a friend who does that.
Nice.
I'm gonna call her. And she's an investor here. You met her, I think, my friend Erin.
Oh,
she's an investor here in New Hampshire. I'm gonna have to say, hey, you need to look into this. Let's do this together. So she just bought a house that was 1875.
Wow.
It's a beauty. It's a gorgeous house. But anyway, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. How long do we go?
It's pretty much however long you would like to go.
Oh, well, I'm loving it. I don't want to take too much of your time.
No, I feel you, Devin. I do have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
I'm pretty interested. I like to ask everybody, and usually the answers are, at least a little bit different from person to person. It's always fun. So, how do you define wealth?
Oh gosh.
That's usually the common response.
I haven't ever been money driven. That's not ever been anything that drives me. Yeah. So I would say someone who is very wealthy has family and for me, relationship with the living God.
Yeah.
But people being more important than things. I think that's probably the wealthiest you can be, is if you have people that you love and that love you. Like that's my probably top sign of wealth. And for me, I think if those things are the most important things to you, then all the rest comes. It all comes.
I totally agree with you, Devin. Like, it's especially in like the real estate sphere, like the amount of opportunities that open up from like just building like genuine relationships and like it's crazy. And then, all of a sudden, like you just go out, because it's a lot of fun and like, like making friends and like helping people, like, you
Yeah.
find a deal like, oh, actually, like this guy, I was just talking to him the other day, like he might like this, and just like playing that connector role. And
Yeah.
like you're right, all of a sudden, just from having fun and like, having those relationships and stuff,
Mm.
everything else comes later.
Yeah. It
It's
all
really
works.
interesting. It's like I can't even put it into words, like, you know, because I mean, like, all of us like have to make a living. I mean, it's like it is what it is, but like
It's one of the necessary things in life. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
but like just like if you're just focused on, like you said, like if you're just focused on the dollar and like being driven by that, like it's probably not going to happen,
Yeah.
because like then you'll start to make decisions and completely void like what you were just saying, and like start to pick like money over relationships, and then like people start to catch wind of that, and like
Yeah.
people are getting hurt, and then all of a sudden, because you're shooting for the dollar, like now everything's really negative in a different area, so it's
Yeah.
like, oh well,
Yeah. And I think it's a struggle. I mean,
yeah,
because we can say, oh yeah, that's the most important thing to me. And like, but I think in life, because we have to have money, it's always a struggle.
yeah,
It's not never a struggle. But for me, the times that I've been able to say, you know what, I know you need to sell your house because you're going through some really hard times,
yeah,
and you just bought it like 3 years ago, and this is like maybe when the market wasn't so good.
yeah,
You know what, I'm just going to help you because you just really need to get out of this. And even during times where maybe I was a little strapped,
yeah,
because those are just more important. But then there are other
exactly.
times where I feel maybe compelled to give somebody a discount, but I just don't want to because I want the money.
Yeah.
So I think they're just
Exactly.
like real life decisions that you have to struggle through and check your heart on. And for
It is.
me, I'll just go, you know what? Because for me, I feel compelled by the Lord many times. Just, like I'll just hear a whisper in my heart, like, you need to do this. And I sometimes I have to just, instead of holding on like this, I
Yeah.
just have to go, okay, Lord, all right,
Yeah.
I'll do it. And when I do, it's always just better.
Yeah.
And there's just such freedom that comes from giving freely. And so yeah, anyway.
I totally agree with you, Devin. Like just like finding that balance and like, situation by situation. And
Mhm.
like just I was telling the guy that I met the other day, like what I've realized about some of like the very, very successful people, even like around us, is like some of the people who have been like the most successful are the ones who like just genuinely help people out the most.
Yeah. Yeah,
And like
it's
I've
true.
seen it in quite a few people, at this point. And it's just kind of one of those traits where like, oh, like if you just like want to see people succeed and like support them and like, all right, like we're playing this game together, like let's crush this. And like
Yeah.
it makes you feel good, like it helps them out, like it makes them feel good, like
I
everybody
think it's
wins.
way more fulfilling
It
than
is.
just trying to trudge along on your own and being afraid of everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's way more fulfilling.
it
Yeah, I've
definitely
seen a
is.
lot of that too with people in our group.
Yeah.
I really do.
And
Yeah.
it's just so wholesome, like
Yeah,
it's or
it is.
heartwarming, I guess you could say.
Yeah, truly. I agree. I agree.
Devin, what is your best piece of advice to new investors that want to start and manage their rental portfolio, or even like just get started in general?
Yeah. Well, because of my many years of property management, I would go probably this direction with it,
Sure.
is don't be worried about getting that investment if you're buying a multi, and you're going to do your own management. Don't be really concerned as much with getting that warm body in that place,
Hmm.
but rather be really, really concerned about getting the right person in there. And if it means you have to leave your place vacant for a month or two to
Yeah.
find the quality tenant, the one who has excellent references, has fairly good credit, has good job security. They've been in their job for a while. They haven't just moved around a lot, and they maybe even have this is what I always looked for was really good references from their last landlords that said, yeah, they kept a really nice house. I always like to listen for those that they said, oh, she was Mrs. Clean. I'm like, good, I want that one. Yeah. So I think that would be my biggest recommendation to somebody was don't just rent to a warm body because you want to get that money coming in, because that person might cost you way more money than it did to wait a month or two.
I love that so much. That's so
Yeah.
valuable.
It's super, super valuable. And that came through experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of my first rentals that I did, I rented to a lady. Her husband was an engineer. They were moving to Albuquerque, had plenty of money, good job, stability. And she was like a hoarder. I found out afterwards. It was like, I didn't do my due diligence. I should have done better. That was a good, for me, a really good lesson learned. It's like, okay, I'm going to wait. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And then, like you said, I think the other really great pieces, you can have a good plumber, have a good electrician, have a good handyman, or be able to do it yourself. Yeah.
I love that. How was
Yep,
that
those are
with like the Airbnbs? Like, when it comes to like, I'm not too familiar with Airbnb. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to like, is there ways to like vet, like the people that want to like, rent like a room there, or is it more dependent on like,
Yeah. Yeah, my kids, my daughter Micaiah, she's a researcher, and she and her husband, they started listening to Biggerpockets way before I had ever heard of it. So they're like super on top of things like that. And they do my management for my Airbnbs. I only have one left. I didn't tell that part of the story, but I made a really good profit on two of my condos, and reinvested. But that's another story for another day. But so my daughter Micaiah actually figured out through, we did have one tenant that was kind of not a great tenant. We found some messes, and they had tons of empty alcohol cans and bottles and stuff. But we decided that we weren't going to rent to anybody without any reviews like that we were just going to make that one of our foundational criteria. And so they also put a party clause in our rules and said, we want you to read through this, and if you can agree to this, then we'll consider you. And so those were the two things with Airbnbs, because you can't really take an application, but and you don't want to push somebody away that's only going to be there for 3 or 4 days. They're not going to be as invested as if they were doing a long-term rental. So those were the two things that I think that they just really do well, is they're really good communicators. They let people know we don't typically rent to people without any reviews. And then also, if you're coming in, for the week for ski season, because those are the rougher times when you have groups coming to ski and they all want to just pile into one small unit, and save money, and party all night. We would have to really just do it that way. But we've done very well, super well. I think we've only had a couple of touchy things. We had a real scary experience probably about a month ago. Oh, it was actually, maybe November or December, where my cleaners hadn't checked some of the drawers in the condo, and one of our guests came in and went upstairs and found their 2-year-old with a gun. It was horrifying.
Oh my God.
It was horrifying for all of us.
Yeah.
And so I think someone had traveled with their firearm, put it in the drawer next to the bed. We think it might have been in the drawer. It might have been under the bed. We don't know.
Yeah.
And thank God they found it. I mean, there's things that can happen.
Yeah.
Thank God we caught it. We had a police officer. My son-in-law lives there, so he took a policeman over. They grabbed the firearm, took it to the police department. We, created a police report, and we fully refunded the guests, and sent them. They left early. It was kind of very traumatic for all of us, but we had to go through some interviews with Airbnb, like, hey, what's going on? You're not supposed to have firearms on your property.
I know.
We could lose our super host status.
Wow.
It was really alarming and very scary, but it all ended up okay. My son-in-law handled it very well.
Yeah.
And my son-in-law, my other one, who's the manager, he lives in Colorado. But from afar, he did a super job, and we retained our super host status. But yeah, so there are all kinds of things that you learn along the way. So now all of our cleaners have to check all the drawers and under the beds every time they clean and make sure that everything is, top notch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Wow. The joys
yeah,
of real estate investing.
that was a little scary. That
Yeah.
was a little scary. So
Wow.
yeah. Anyway, so now we're down to one Airbnb, and I guess I'll just share real quickly. So those were we've done house hacking, where we lived in the house and fixed it up and added value and remodeled, and that was what we really figured was our retirement when we were younger.
Yeah.
Because John wasn't into investing at that point. And so that was what we did. But, that is a type of investing. And so anyway, we sold our first condo in 2020 and decided we needed to reinvest it. And we came out with about, I think, $85,000 profit in just a couple of years, which was
On a seller finance
not
deal.
so bad. Yeah, that was not
No
so
big
bad.
deal, right?
And so I was very happy with that. And so this is kind of a funny story, because we were looking for a flip, because John was like, yeah, we could do a flip here, except that there was like nothing on the market that we found that was reasonable enough to do a flip.
Yeah.
And so we're looking, and finally, John Bombachi came up with this syndication that he was doing in Lowell. And he had this 132 unit complex that he decided he's going to syndicate and offer to investors to buy a share. And so John went with me one day to a Pines of Properties meetup, which I love going to. Those are the most fun. And I've met so many really cool people there. But anyway, so John hears about it. My husband, John, hears about it. And he's the one that brings it up to me. He's like, why don't we do that with our money? I was like, what?
You're like,
Is
wait
this
a minute.
you? Are you sure?
Who is this guy?
Yeah. But
who are
through
you?
the years, through the years, whenever my husband comes up with something that's totally out of character for him, I have to know that God's probably speaking. So we ended up investing that way as well now. So we have a passive investment.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, which I've never done either, and I don't understand it all, but I trust the investors who did it.
Of course.
And we got our first check this month, our first dividend check. It was like, it's just a little bit, but we'll stick that away for a new investment. We'll just stick it into a little account, or maybe we'll buy some precious metals with it. I don't know. Who knows?
Many options.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we just sold one of our other condos. We bought it for $75,000. We sold it for $157,000 just 2 years later.
Wow. What's
a
that,
year
like
and a half later.
200
Yeah.
and something percent return or something
That's
crazy?
huge.
I don't even know how to
huge.
do the math.
Yeah. So that was just like really super cool.
Yeah.
But so now we're looking to put it into the 4-family that we have a contract on.
All right.
Yeah. So
That's
we'll
amazing,
see.
Devin.
It is. You can do a lot, even if you start old.
You're not old.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
It's always a great time to be invested in real estate.
It is always. It's just,
Always.
It's fun. It's really fun. Anyway, yeah. So
That's
that was
amazing.
those are my stories. Some of them. I always have more stories. So you have to come for another taco night. We'll have more stories.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Last but not least question, Devin. Do you read, and what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone? Or like a podcast, or like however you like to consume?
Well, I'll have to be honest with you. I haven't ever been a big reader. And I love to listen to audiobooks. So I would say probably the only book that I've read real estate wise, besides the Bible has a lot of very practical information in it, is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I
Yeah.
really love that book. I listened to it on audio, and it was on Audible. It was really fun. And I think that was one of the things that kind of got me
Got
kind
you
of got
hooked.
me excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I listen to a lot of different audiobooks, but that was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one definitely sticks out. That one got me hooked into this kind of world as well.
Yeah. It's just really good. And then I looked back at my parents and I thought, you know what, they had came from very slim means, but they started little bit at a time and started buying like a piece of land with a trailer on it, and then fixed it up and sold it. And I had forgotten that my mom and I in our business had purchased a duplex many years ago. So I actually my first investment property was when I was in my probably early 30s, and I'd totally
Wow.
forgotten about it. Yeah. Anyway. So
Wow.
anyway,
That's incredibly interesting, Devin. You have
yeah.
quite the story.
Oh, you have no idea. A lot of things I'm not sharing. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh.
It's fun.
So where on like social media can you be found, or like contacted, like on the agent side, investor side, wherever you want to share?
I think really just through Candor Realty. Probably I'm not a whole I have my own personal social media,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've never done a whole lot of that. Mostly I just love people, and I people tell people about me in work
Yeah.
and in business. And so Devin Marshall on Facebook and Instagram, but through Candor Realty probably.
Sure.
Yeah, I love New Hampshire. I am so happy that I get to be a realtor in New Hampshire. Um, been here just 2 years, and it just feels like home. It's just the most wonderful place in the world. I love it. So yeah, anybody that's looking New Hampshire, just call me.
Definitely reach out to Devin, guys.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
So and you're my favorite too.
Aw.
I always tell people about you.
Right
I'm
back
always
at you.
talking about Kyle. I'm like, I love Kyle. He's just one of my favorites. So thank you for inviting me. I really
Oh,
enjoyed this.
it's been quite a pleasure, Devin. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming on
you're
here. That was
welcome.
absolutely amazing.
It was fun.
It
Thanks,
really
Kyle.
was. I will talk to you soon, my friend. Thank you
All
so
right.
much again.
Sounds good. You take care.
Stay warm.
You
All
too.
right.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. That concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully, you could take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.